All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for attending my talk slash retrospective, and I hope everybody has had a great NarraScope so far. Awesome. Yeah. My name is Devin, and I am the lead creator at Vine Moss Games, where in 2025 we made a game a month. And when I say we, it was largely a solo project that turned into a duo project later in the year. And I grew a lot as a developer and as a person, and as a person that realizes that doing a game a month is probably something I would have second thoughts on once again if I had to do it again. But this talk is those 12 lessons that I learned from each of the games, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. And hopefully, you leave with something that hopefully not all 12, but one or two might be impactful for the journey that you are on right now. So, this talk will be, in terms of the structure, about me a little bit and what is Vine Moss Games and why starting a studio was what I wanted to do. And then I will go into those 12 lessons, as well as at the very end, leave you all with a final recap and hopefully have some time for questions and reflection time. But a little bit about me. I am a narrative designer, writer by trade, and I started my game design journey as a creative writer, writing short fiction and poetry and flash fiction. And I realized that during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to play a lot of games and realized that I wanted to maybe try write for games. And that's kind of what I started doing, whether it was with Twine and interactive fiction and submitting to different competitions. I soon realized my passion for writing in context to a much larger project that is in a relationship with another person, particularly the player. So that was really exciting for me, and that's why I decided to go to the NYU Game Center for my master's, where I not only learned how to actually develop games in different mediums and different engines, rather, but also be experimental in my work and think truly as an artist and as a creative. And that is where I was fortunate enough to meet the name plug, JD Calvelli, the conference chair this year, but also work with him and make our thesis game, Imogen, which in essence is a drama game about two divorced parents reuniting due to the loss of their child and the ramifications of that, and trying to use the game's medium to tell a very serious story, especially in a space that I think we need more of those serious stories. And it was a very meaningful experience, and one that kind of led me to the future endeavors that is Vine Moss Games. Outside of that, I have been a game designer and pixel artist, most recently for Turbo, which is an New York-based game engine that also helps with Play NYC and play crafting as of recently. And I've also been very fortunate to be part of the Game Devs of Color as a scholar, as well as the Amplifying New Voices cohort, as well as doing some client work for Cool Math Games and Latinx and Gaming. And then for fun, I also do pixel art under Devander, and that has been a really good journey outside of my writing and game development. And one of those big things about game development is Vine Moss Games for me. I decided in 2024 to create a narrative game studio that really focused on people connecting and disconnecting, creating grounded human stories about people meeting and missing one another. And that was once again, really big challenge for me. And I decided to try a different model for this particular narrative indie game studio, which was a game a month. Why? I hope to answer that a little bit throughout this talk, but these are the 12 games that I ended up with, and each one explores humanity in some way, shape, or fashion, using different story markers, different visual directions, as well as different mechanics to inform the narrative in very small sessions for players. And I'm fortunate enough to be releasing all 12 of these games under the title Imagine We Were Human, which will be coming out on Steam in about 2 weeks. So we're really excited for that, and we're working with Pickleworks, that is JD's Picklework publishing company, boutique publishing company. And so we're very fortunate to finally get it out on Steam and have as many people play this very experimental work and see the journey that we've had over the past year and a half now. And so I will caveat the next 12 slides. These are 12 different lessons that I had learned as I worked on these games, and in no way, shape, or form are they 12 lessons that you need for making games. I think they are very particular to my journey and to my experience and to my very niche way of creating games. And hopefully you, again, find one or two that you see useful. But I also appreciate that you're here to talk about, for me to talk about my retrospective of this entire journey. And so each lesson will have a tinge of what this game was and why I'm applying this lesson to it. But without further ado, let's do it. So lesson number 1, scope. I think this is a pretty great foundation of keeping a project within a scope based on your time frame. And I will start by not even showing a game that was part of the grand Imagine We Were Human collection, but Night Owls is the first narrative game that I made under Vinemoss Games. And this was treated as the test game for the studio, and seeing if actually making a game a month was possible or sustainable, or if anybody would really enjoy it as somebody that had a very specific skill set and wanted to create games and see how to tell stories in a very particular way. And Night Owls is a 20-minute visual novel, and it is designed to be text heavy and well within my expertise, especially at the time, as a maybe more visual novel oriented developer. And as you think of this maybe in context of a smaller team with other team members having a different set of skills, you have to curtail your game development process to suit those different skills, right? And if you're a solo dev, making sure that you have, I try to treat it as separate parts of me and separate parts of me as a developer, artist, programmer, musician, whatever it may be for the given project, making sure that I'm doing the balancing needed for this particular scope. And so it's not just also accounting for how much do I have to do, but how difficult will it be for me and the very different parts of me or the different team members in my studio to actually work on the project and ship something out, especially in the constricted time frame of a month. And so scope is I think something that we talk about a lot, and one that we have to start off with for the lessons. But off we go. Lesson number 2 is the toolkit and designing your toolkit to suit your needs, again, for the given project. And what are the things that you rely on as a developer to make the game that you envision? And so I have a quick acronym that has been useful for me for every project that I've created. WATER. Websites, apps, templates, exercises, and routines. So when I think of websites and apps, what are the things that I always use to research my game ideas, my concepts? And so I usually turn to something like Pinterest for my visual design, or Twine to work on my prototyping and drafting the narrative sequences of my games. Then thinking of templates, as I had developed game after game, I had things programmatically that I could use and transfer because they had a similar structure in terms of maybe the narrative or the title or ending sequence. And then in terms of exercises, I, for a writer, kind of use these as my creative practice to brainstorm and generate ideas that are tried and true. Say that it's 2 characters speaking in a room. How do I go about it? And then I can use maybe whatever from that moment to drive my story creation for the next game. And then routines, in a similar vein, what are the things that you're always going to do at the very beginning of that creative process, that development timeline for that month? What is the things that you know you will have to be prepared for when you're working in the engine and you encounter the plethora of bugs that you anticipate as maybe somebody that isn't the most programmatically as an expert? And as well as how do you ship that game once you know that, 1, you have run out of time, or 2, you feel ready and are confident that you can ship this and move on to the next one. And so In Time on Distance was that first game where I built the dialogue manager that I had chopped and changed and used for future games, as well as establishing the art direction and how I go about establishing art direction, and as well as all the software that I use, including Procreate, Twine, as I mentioned, as well as using like GitHub for my version control. And of course, you chop and change, and I certainly did throughout the year based on what I needed for a project or based on how I wanted to experiment for a given project. And I am already running out of time based on each slide, so I will continue on. And again, these are really, really quick, especially because they are 12. So hope one or two at least impact you as I fly through them. So lesson number 3, looking through your games through an art lens. And I think game development for me, especially, is an artistic practice that I take very seriously. And there are plenty of games that I have made and play for fun and for leisure, but thinking critically and through the lens of an artist has opened a lot of the idea doors, you could say, for me as a developer. And Doublespeak is a great example of this. This was a game made in February where each scene is presented as if they were film, and you have different angles for a camera, for example, but they're all hand painted. And I think I really value that practice, that meticulous use of what I have available to me. And I think this is a really big distinction, especially in a time when it can feel convenient, or there's tools that make things maybe more efficient. You can say, I think embracing taking longer, being more meticulous with your work can lead to not only a greater appreciation for your work as a developer, but being able to recognize, the audience being able to recognize what they value in you as an artist and as a developer making games in the way that you are. And so definitely looking through an art lens is one that I take with any game that I make. And then, moving on to lesson 4, presentation. And so the presentation starts the moment a player chooses to open up your game or sit down during like an expo to play your game. And it's that maybe one thing that catches their eye, or it's the loading screen as they get ready to play your game. And I think it's a huge honor for when a player decides to play your game, and being able to repay them immediately is something that I really value, and I hope you do as well as developers. And so Mind Anatomy is the game I made in March, where it's a whole story told through cards. And I think it is a game that could be maybe told in a very different way if I wanted to, but I think the presentation of cards, flipping them, and having that as a constant layout throughout the game was something that was really important to me, and how I went about developing this game. And the cards flips and changes and is mechanically driven. And as you can see, maybe in the second image, you are able to choose different paths for your narrative through the cards as they flip over and they flip back again to continue the story. And so having cards as maybe my presentation piece to form the outer layer of the core of my story was something that was really important for me, and especially for this game, but one that I was very conscious of. And I think as developers, choosing maybe a way to present your story should be treated as a very like conscious thing, but also can lead you down to different paths depending on what presentation piece you choose. So I think being aware of that is definitely something that's really important to me. And there we go. Lesson number 5, Project Stars. Find and uplift your game's shining moments. And what I mean by that is I hope that we all have game ideas or games that we're really proud of, and there are specific moments in there that you know when you present it to a player, they are going to be floored. Because when you made it, you're like, wow, I'm really good at this thing, or whatever it may be for you. But with that comes the maybe excitement of showing that as soon as you can, or maybe revealing a little bit too much too early. And that could undermine all of the work that you had done to build up that moment. And so protecting your stars maybe a little bit in that you should maybe save it for that very particular moment in that game to create that grand reveal. And so the example is Hold On. This is a game poem about hugging, and you really don't know what the game is fully about until you reach a certain point in the game. And I think that big reveal leads to a lot of context and maybe greater appreciation once you get there. And so make sure that your excitement for, oh, this is really good. Oh, I can't wait for people to see this and appreciate it. Don't let that get in the way of the moments, the building blocks that you need to create to actually get to that moment and make sure that payoff is really well done. And then lesson number 6, getting personal. And I think drawing from personal experiences as a writer, as a narrative designer, also as an artist in general is something that I think and I hope that all artists in some way, shape, or form draw on and to create and to hopefully share with other people. Remember Me Before Andromeda is a game that I created in May, and this is a very personal story about very specific memories from my childhood, growing up with specific friendships, and how those friendships maybe are very different from what they are now, and maybe for no reason in particular, but that very common, hopefully universal experience of drifting away and being very specific in my memories that I choose to play or choose to develop for players to play, creating that scenario where it is something that is very specific, but hopefully really relatable for a player is something that I think amplifies Remember Me Before Andromeda as one that is very, of course, memorable as a developer in my mind, but I think memorable for other players as they play it and hopefully relate to that experience with an experience of their own. And so stories that embrace these specific memories can invoke more than we may initially realize. And so never stray away from writing a story that means a lot to you and then sharing it. And you may be surprised that people understand more than you may think. But we are now halfway through those lessons. It has been a blast and a flurry of information and me discussing. So again, hopefully we have like some time to stretch and calm down a little bit. But we will move on to lesson number 7. And this one is don't dev alone. Making games with other people is the way it should work. And this is really important for me as a solo dev for that first half of making Von Moss games and making a game a month. I think relying on a external source for ideas and for feedback and making a game with another person for this one in particular, Seconds Between Summer, which was our June game. And I had the great honor of working with our collaborating artist, Estelle, for this one. And you can see the difference in maybe the quality of the character art, and one that I'm super, super appreciative of. But being able to work with somebody else really opens your eye to a whole set of new ideas, and definitely did for my creative practice. But that doesn't mean that you don't dev alone at all, or solo deving should not mean silo deving. Even if you're a solo dev working on your project and whatever it may be, and you think you feel equipped for the game that you want to make, that doesn't mean that you don't talk to other people. It doesn't mean that you are isolated from a huge community that is wanting to play your games, wanting to share ideas with you and learn from you, and also you learn from them. And so as you make your project, as you work on things, knowing that there is a community like NarraScope or anywhere where you are in the world that will be not only willing, but really excited about these types of games, whether it's the swimming game about memories or something completely different, there will be somebody that is interested and will be wanting to make hopefully collaborations in the future, but at the very least willing to help you out on this type of project. So do not dev alone, even if you are a solo dev, is lesson number 7. And then lesson number 8 is maybe a more common one, where you are working on a project and you feel really ambitious about it and you think you can do it. And then you realize that, oh, I have maybe 3 more days until I'm supposed to release this game. And there's a lot that I need to do. And so I think very naturally we say, okay, what can I cut? What can I remove from the development pipeline so I can actually get this game done? And After Wonder, our July game, was a great example of that, where I had a huge mechanical conundrum where I created a arcade cabinet where I wanted the player to be able to interact with every single button. As you can see on the screen, those are a lot of buttons, and there wasn't really a lot of gameplay for those specifically. And so doing that maybe opposite of what I actually needed to do in terms of the story, the art, put me in a hole way sooner than I needed to. So realizing from the very get-go and being often reminded that every feature that you think of or you think would be cool doesn't mean that it's essential. And so you have to combine both your creativity and your ability to generate ideas and execute on those ideas with your critical, okay, is this something that will work for this specific project based on my timeline? And if it doesn't, can I cut it and maybe use it for a different project? And thinking both the creative and critical throughout your development pipeline at every step of the way is something that I often have to remind myself of as I worked on these games, especially at the monthly timeline. And so lesson number 8, cut content. Okay, lesson number 9 is don't let your past work constrain your present work, undefined. You are undefined. So Liminal Strangers is a game we made in August, and it's a game poem about 2 people walking in a hallway. And there is no text, and you are pressing 2 buttons throughout the entire game. But I see it as one of our most ambitious, one of our most creatively fulfilling projects, very much so because it's so different from our other projects that we had made throughout that year. And having the notion that whatever you made before you does not mean you are limited to that style or to that convention, and going really toward whatever you're experimentally called to is how we treat undefined. And when you have an idea of what this studio should be, and you keep making games that represent that idea or that are really constrained within the things that you set out at the very beginning of the year to do, and you realize, wow, I'm really struggling with this for this month, make that audible and say that this idea no longer serves me, and make room for something else. And leave those ideas behind if they are meant to be in your games or if they are meant to confine your games to a specific genre or style. They'll come back to you. And I think treating it as a moving, flexible idea or a flexible way of going about game development, I think releases a lot of the tension, releases maybe a lot of the constraint that you might feel as a developer. And it definitely did for me. And again, Liminal Strangers is one of my favorite projects because of how different it was in using very simple mechanics to tell a Texas story, but one that can be so impactful, is how I hope to continue making games for Vine Moss Games. And all it took is treating all the things that I made before as what was the past and looking toward the future. All right, so we have 3 more. I hope you're still with me, appreciate it. Lesson number 10, it's the pivot pulse. And this essentially means there are going to be times when changing directions, ripping stuff up is the only way to move forward. And this is our September game, Incoherence. And this is a puzzle narrative where you're decoding the language of what you don't speak as the protagonist. You encounter different people, they don't share the same language as you, and you're trying to figure out through this puzzle what they are saying essentially. And I was really excited about this one where I wanted each level to build off of the other, where you encounter one person, you gain another understanding of this particular language, and then you use what you learned from that level to carry you to the next level, and hopefully build this very intricate puzzle mechanic. And again, in a month was back to that cut content section, ambitious, and I think overestimating my time, my ability to establish this type of linear story. So pivot pulsing to doing something completely different, where each level stands on its own as a way to play the game, and you encounter different characters that way. And I ended up with 3 separate levels that you don't have to you don't have to complete one to play the other. And that freedom, I think, for players to pick whichever one based on the illustrations that were interesting to them was way more exciting and more approachable for a player, especially at these different showcases that we had gone to. And so I think this lesson is very much taking care of yourself and taking note of, why am I actually doing it the way that I am, when I can switch to something else that might be more sustainable for me as a developer. And hopefully you're surprised and realize that, oh, this approach, this gut feeling, knowing that I don't have this much time, can lead to a more beneficial experience for the players that play your game. And so lesson number 10, pivot pulse. Pivot pulse is also the catchiest of, I would say, the lessons I had learned. And so hopefully that one stays in your mind, right? Okay, 2 more. Lesson number 11, documenting. Write, record, and save progress and reflections on your games. No matter what stage they're in, and no matter how good or bad you feel about them, documenting is developing and is one of the most crucial aspects of developing, in my opinion, and especially was useful for my games. And in particular, you see No Room for Sharks, which was the October game. And this is a horror-based navigational game where you have your protagonist in the center, and they are navigating through different doors, seemingly endless doors, as they encounter phantoms of their past, we could say. And it is really, really cool, but also so informative that on that image at the very top of the screen is my 1 week of progress in designing this map and having the layout where you can see the doors, you can see the layout that I had. And of course, it's not the finished product, but helped inform so much of what I would go on to make for this game. And now I can treat it as a way to look back and see, where was I at this certain stage of this game? How was I also feeling? And was I really excited about this project? And by the looks of it, I probably was, because I ended up finishing it, and it looks pretty consistent to what you would expect from foundation to execution. And if the retrospectives and in-progress work is not maybe the reason why you're making games, you can also treat these as maybe your portfolio piece that breaks down your games and shows that, oh, you're very conscious of this development process and how critical it is to know where you're at in a given project and how you present it to other people, so they understand that you know what you're talking about when you're making your games. And the big key thing, as I mentioned before, documenting is developing. So don't treat it as a side thing that you can do once you're actually done with the game and then you can write about it. No, it's a very day-to-day, week-to-week type of thing where no matter what stage you're in, write about it. You will be surprised at how it helps you figure out a lot of the problems that you might be encountering in your games, or makes you less stressed about the many hurdles that you might have at the beginning of the development process, and hopefully it calms you down a bit and makes you, I think, more equipped to continue on the project. So lesson number 11, document. And then lesson number 12 is develop fun. And making fun and having fun and realizing that making games is one of the coolest things that you could do. And there is a reason why we're here in the first place, is because we are so emboldened by the creative practice and feel that we are equipped to make games and learn from other people and try new things and see where games can be and how cool it would be if we were a part of that. And Within Rotation is a great example of developing fun because it was our November game where at this point we had made 11, and I personally wanted something that was a bit light in tone and in the content. And this game is about strangers encountering one another through a gumball machine. And there is a lot of color, there's a lot of music, and there is also just a lot of positivity in this game, and one that I thought would be really useful, especially in the environment that we are in now more than ever. And so having these gumballs, these flavor categories for each of my characters, it was not only motivational for me as a developer, it hopefully also built a community that realized that, oh, this could be appealing, this could be fun, and once they played it, hopefully they realized that as well. And understanding at the very end of the day that we are game developers for a reason. We like to make things and share them with people. We like to express and tell things in a creative, artistic way. And there are so many cool people that are a part of it. And so I'm also glad to very much be a part of it as well. And so those are our 12 lessons. And so you can see scope, toolkit, art lens, presentation, project stars, getting personal, don't dev alone, cut content, you're undefined, pivot pulse, document, and develop fun. And in some way, shape, or form, we hope that these 12 lessons are whether you pick bits and pieces of it, or there's one that really stuck out to you, you can take into your own projects. And if you knew these, perfect. And I hope that this was a helpful reminder that game development is complicated, especially as an indie game dev, and you might be managing a lot of things on your own, or you're in a small team and you're trying to figure out what that next project is for you. These were helpful guidelines that I had learned throughout this very ambitious journey, making a game a month. And once again, we are really excited to announce that Imagine We Were Human is coming to Steam very soon, June 30th, and you can wish list that now. And thank you so much for your time. You can find us VineMossGames.com, at VineMossGames on Instagram, at Pajamington, if you want to see lovely character art from Estelle. And we are also, again, being published, our game, by pickleworks.dev, and you can see JD Calvelli and Samir Herwer, as well as a wonderful team that has helped us get this game and together, and we're super excited to be on Steam very soon. So thank you so much. But yes, any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes.
You said two questions. So your limitation, the limit to your constraints was 1 game per month.
Mhm.
Did you have any others? Did the theme come through month to month, or you were just kind of like have to make a game?
Yeah.
What are those like thematic? How did they come together thematically?
Yeah. So one of the limitations being a game a month, what are maybe the other limitations thematically perhaps, or like whatever the content may have been for a given game, how did I go about that? So for this process, I knew that making a game a month where I did not think about the game in advance was me setting myself up for a little bit of failure if for the very basic reason that a month isn't a lot of time. And so I spent a lot of that 2024 end of the year doing some planning in terms of creating a production plan where I had all the 12 games laid out in some way, shape, or form conceptually. And then I also had chunks of themes for each game. So as I was releasing these in 2025, I would also do a theme reveal. And so for the first 3 games, January, February, March, it was cards, copies, and clocks. And those were ways to think of these games as how can I make a game that uses maybe the inanimate objects that are part of our everyday in some way that is unique or not something that you would expect. And that helped as like a thematic like tracks to continue making the games without feeling like there's so much opportunity to do whatever I want. And so thematically, that's probably the biggest one. And then knowing my skill set as a developer and knowing that I'm not going to make a tactics game because I will not be interested in creating a tactics systems, nor do I have the time or the expertise, although I do love tactics games. But knowing and understanding that made sure that I was not overstepping, while also realizing that there are things I'm interested in that I could probably learn throughout this process and experimenting on those. And so having that balance of, I know that I'm not going to be able to do this in a month. I need way more time, but maybe I could try this and I could see how it goes. Keeping that balance was definitely something that I tried, and I succeeded in a lot of ways and failed in many others. But yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah.
I have two questions. One is a small one. The smallest one is, do you have a favorite game out of the 12?
Yeah, favorite game out of the 12. Other than Liminal Strangers, because that's the one I show all the time, and I think I get a lot of the feedback of, oh, you just press these two buttons and that's it. Whereas like the gameplay, quote unquote, I think that's always fun to hear and is, we talk about this all the time, Estelle and I, where it's so nice to get that type of feedback where somebody says, oh, this is a game I didn't know. And we are that way, like we are introducing them to this type of world. Outside of that, I think Seconds Between Summer that I mentioned was a lot of fun to work on, and one that I think about a lot, only because not only because it was our first collaboration game together, but it is a point and click mystery of sorts where you are using a word bank that you collect as you encounter these different memories as you swim, and I love the Case of the Golden Idol, and that was one that I was very much inspired by, and so I still play that one a lot. And yeah, I would say Seconds Between Summer.
The longer question is, after the practice, after the 12-month practice, the exercise, what do you have any insight? Do you have any remarks of like what is Devin's voice? What is Devin's authorship behind like everything you've created?
Yeah, great question. So after doing this journey, what is maybe the voice that I was trying to prove throughout the year? How do I see myself as an auteur? And I would say to that, I am a experimental game developer that is trying to use games as a way to funnel maybe the more common mundane aspects of humanity, and realizing, hopefully helping other people realize that we can find a lot in the ordinary, and trying to find ways that are approachable, but also experimentally different from what you see in the games industry is what drives me as an artist and a game developer. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Nicholas.
Yeah, after, looking back, maybe the month or two after you had finished the 12th game, was there a game that like called you back to it, that you put in additional work? And if so, what was the thing that called you back to it?
Yeah, great question. What was one of the games, if I had one, that I kept coming back to, or what called me back to it after this entire journey? And it's funny because the publishing team will know Within Rotation is a game that we made again in November, and that has a huge cast of characters. And because it was so fun to make all these different characters with all these different personalities, we wanted to add 8 more for this expanded version, which is causing them a lot of headaches, but is also making our time as artist and writer a little more busier than normal. And I think just having the scale or having the structure that allows you to scale up is something that we're excited by, but also can lead to a lot of the complicated, like, oh, maybe I should cut content. But I don't know, I had so much fun with that project that I want to keep working on it. And we will get those additional characters in the game in time for release. So I'm not worried about it. But yeah, don't ask JD and Samira. But yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah.
I think at the beginning, you kind of alluded to a hesitation to do this a second time. So my question is, would you do this again? And if maybe no, what would it take for you to do it?
Do it again?
Just curious what that was like.
Yeah. Okay, if the question is, I had some hesitation at the beginning that I alluded to that I would not do this a game a month process again, and what would it take for me to do it again? The reason why I don't want to do it again is I am a very different person since the start of that journey, and I think it was in context important for me as a developer and designer to do it. You have so many ideas, you want to be able to share them with the world. Just go for it was kind of my way of going about it. And at the end of this process, I feel fulfilled in that. And there are other ideas that I have. There are ideas that I generated throughout the year that I didn't get to work on. And being comfortable with that is something that I now can understand and appreciate. Although I will say, and again, don't talk to JD and Samir about it, but I love the idea of working on game poems in much more intent and detail. And so Liminal Strangers is that great example where I still think about how these small pieces can create so much. And I want to be able to hopefully one day make a series of that. And will it be a game a month? Likely not. But I think having a series would be something that would be fulfilling because, again, I get to explore something very specific about this niche of games. And I think I will find fulfillment through that. But no, I don't think I'm doing a game a month for at least a while. Once this game releases, I'm definitely taking a break. But thank you for your question. Yes.
I was just curious about the momentum you were building as you were going through this crazy process, and how that felt like, and when you were finishing each game, like how that impacted the next one, sort of as you were building momentum. And then secondly, I was just curious about did you put yourself on a schedule in terms of releasing them, and did that help you build an audience?
Yeah, great questions. So the first part is what did the momentum of making a game a month look like, especially near the end, perhaps? What did I maybe learn and take away from those previous projects to inform my future projects, and setting a release date, and creating maybe the social press around each game release? How did that help, and how did that maybe build a community and audience for these games? So in terms of momentum, one of the things that I appreciated about that end of 2024, beginning of 2025, in the present moment, I definitely didn't appreciate it, or at that time, I definitely didn't appreciate it, but I had to build so many different systems. And I talked about that dialogue manager where I had so many different hiccups about what does it mean to build a dialogue manager? What do you need for each character? What is the style that you want to go about for that dialogue manager? And that is simply a question that I did not have at September's time, because I had used that dialogue manager in many different ways. I had built on top of it, and I had chopped and changed it for different projects. So building that foundation very early on meant that I didn't have to worry about those questions later, and that also meant that I could be a lot more experimental. And so those first 3 games are very text heavy and were very oriented to the theme that I built around it. But those later themes are maybe more expansive in terms of maybe the mechanical experimentation, mainly because I was able to build a pretty robust system that I could build around, and experiment with, and really find ways to tell stories that I didn't maybe expect to at the very beginning of the year. And then in terms of the second question, having a release date, having teasers and press releases for each game helped me as a person that I think if I set a deadline and I make that deadline public, there's a lot of motivation to get that done. And having also a supportive community, whether it was close friends and family, especially at the beginning. I remember telling a lot of my friends that I was doing this and saying, and them saying like, are you sure? Or like in the nicest way possible. But having them as accountability partners, but also them being just supporters and fans of my work previously, and knowing that in some way, shape, or form, I'll get this done was definitely huge for my development and for the release of these games. And I think I had a lot of fun creating images and carousel reels. And I'm very also like my background is a little bit in social media from previous jobs. So having the energy around that, and I think being excited about releasing content around the game hopefully led to me being excited and motivated to create content within the game. And that might be a little backwards sometimes, especially it was during the year, but it led me to release those games on time and be comfortable if they didn't get released, because I showed teasers and I showed that this was the release date. And if it is not done in time, so be it, let it out into the world. But that was not really the case throughout the development timeline. So I'm fortunate that that was what happened for the year. But yeah, thank you for your question.
I have a question about lesson 11. You talked about documentation.
Yeah.
And like making 12 games. I'm sure like while you're making a game, you probably are brainstorming other ideas during that period. And I kind of like wanted to know what your process was for like, I guess like cataloging those like kind of like wellspring of ideas. Like where do you put them, store them, and how do you do that?
Yeah. Question is, when I would make things and document about my development process, when those other ideas maybe came up, or when I had future ideas, how would I document them? How would I catalog them so that I can use for reference later? And Notes app was probably the biggest one. I did a couple of mood boards for Pinterest for visual direction. I'd say visually driven for a lot of the ideas, and creating maybe the theme or mood boards was definitely helpful for that. And once I had what I wanted written down in the Notes app, and sometimes it was also like dialogue lines that I would write down because I was like, oh, that could be really cool to say in a game. And I would forget about it for the time being. And that first week of each development cycle, I would look back at it, sit back down and see, okay, is this something that now I want to use? And I feel like that helped in terms of not starting completely at zero, and also feeling super motivated when I come up with an idea and get excited to work on it. I save it for the next game. And so, yeah, I would say that. But thank you so much for your questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming to my talk.